Yo, what is up guys, Lord Sando here, and in today's video we're going to be talking about Deepwoken's next big content updates. As you're probably aware, the developers of Deepwoken are working on a really big update, and it may take a while, and here's what you can expect from the coming updates. So the stuff about the continents and the luminance, that's like something that's definitely not going to happen in the near future. If that does happen, then it'll be in a really long time from now. The developers did confirm that. But we are getting something similar in the sense that we are going to get an expansion and more area to explore. Alright, to provide some context, on May 2020, which was around 2 years ago, Ragusa posted on the Rogue Lineage Discord. This was the first public confirmation of Deepwoken, and he didn't really say much. He literally just linked a song, and that OST is from the anime Made in the Abyss. I'm currently playing that song in the background right now, thank god it's not copyrighted. But when Ragusa posted that song, he was basically signaling to the players that the game Deepwoken would take major inspiration from Made in the Abyss, and 2 years later we can see that's definitely the case. Essentially the plot to Made in the Abyss is basically, it's about this girl who lives in a town, and the town is surrounding this massive hole, which is called the Abyss. The Abyss is incredibly dangerous, and there are loads of artifacts and rare items there, which is why loads of people go down to look for those things. There are lots of layers to the Abyss, and the further down you go, the more dangerous it gets. Returning back to the surface leaves you with an illness, which is called the Curse of the Abyss, and the further down you go, the worse the effects of this illness will be. So as for how that relates to Deepwoken, you may have already guessed, it's incredibly similar to the concept of the depths. The depths in this game only has one layer right now, and if you die there, then obviously you get wiped, but this was not originally meant to be the case. Archmage, responding to a player who was complaining about the kill bricks in the depths, stated that the void was initially going to be the way that you actually went to the second layer. If you fell into those voids, then you wouldn't die, but you'd get sent to the second layer instead. The second layer will be much more dangerous and be a much bigger challenge, but the reward would also be greater as well. In Deepwoken, there isn't many godlike abilities. Like in Rogue, if someone had an artifact in the early stages of the game, they were not to mess with. You saw someone with a phoenix feather in that stage of the game, and yeah, you just don't want to like go near them. There's nothing really like that in Deepwoken. Bells and enchants are sort of similar, but they don't feel as rare or as impactful as some of those artifact type things. To explain why this is relevant, we need to talk about Amorous Pleatsky. Pleatsky was the most renowned flame charmer in Deepwoken's lore, and if you talk to the NPC in Lon Slushy's food shop, he tells you a bit about him. Pleatsky was part of the divers, and he voluntarily went to the depths to find its secrets and to obtain some special powers. Pleatsky was a founder of the application of the Undying Flame. He was the first person to conjure his flame in the depths. In his final trip to the depths, he went as far down as the third layer, and he supposedly found an artifact which gave him incredible powers. From there, he vanished and was never heard from again. In Shirafune's video about Deepwoken's lore, she mentions that Plume was actually Pleatsky himself. Now, I was only a tester for 1 week, but the NPC there was always Plume for me, so it must have happened sometime during Wave 0 testing. Judging by the fact that such an important lore figure went missing and presumably died, we can assume that the layers of the depths are going to be incredibly dangerous. But at the same time, the artifacts and the rewards that they yield are going to be worth it. If this wasn't the case, then Pleatsky wouldn't have gone down so far to the third layer of the depths. Now, why is this also important? Just yesterday, the Deepwoken developers released an announcement stating that they would be working on the second layer of the depths. So to summarize, they mentioned that the way that you get to the second layer would be through an expedition, and expeditions are like area-sized dungeons. Each area requires the player to accomplish tasks to progress to the next zone, and you need to do 4 zones to get to the boss at the end of the run. It sounds like instead of the format just being kill X number of monsters, you actually have to do puzzles and overcome obstacles in order to progress through the dungeon. There are going to be lots of different zones, and they're going to be randomized, so each dungeon run is going to be different. You'll be able to do these dungeons with your friends, but it's going to make it much harder. They did mention that you'll be able to invade other people's runs, which is a concept from Dark Souls. Essentially, you're going to be able to sabotage someone else's dungeon, and it will make the whole experience more challenging and more enjoyable. These areas are going to have NPCs and lore-based interactions, so we may get more idea as to what happened to Pleatsky, and we may learn a bit more about the second layer and the third layer, through these dungeon interactions. So this announcement basically confirms that the old plan of having the second layer just being reached through the void kill brick is no longer going to be a thing. You're actually going to have to do an expedition and go through a dungeon to get down to the second layer of the depths. Extrapolating from what they mentioned about being able to run these dungeons multiple times for different interactions, it's not going to be that high risk, because if you had a chance to get wiped in these dungeons, then you wouldn't really want to run it multiple times. Also, they mentioned that it would be incredibly difficult, so I doubt that this would be something that you have to do in one life, which is kind of a bummer because I wanted it to be a high risk, high reward type thing. Like, imagine you're on your level 60 slot with your friends and you're all in voice call and sweating so hard because if you know that if you make one mistake, your life is gone, it's all wiped. It's going to be hard to make guides or tutorials on this, so it's really going to be a stressful and enjoyable experience because all of the dungeons are going to be randomized, so you really aren't going to know what you're going to get. That kind of high risk, high reward situation would be so desirable in Deepwoken because there really isn't anything like that. Currently, the depths is just so easy to escape from, and you really cannot wipe in this game unless you're trying to. Successfully completing the expedition would lead you to the second layer of the depths, which is evidently going to be much more dangerous than the first layer, but also probably have much better loot. Since Pleatsky found his artifact in the third layer, we probably aren't going to get to that level of strength yet, but you probably will be able to get good loot and maybe special items which are unobtainable to players in the first layer and in the overworld. Now that brings us to the next question: how do you escape from the second layer? What are going to be the repercussions? Because in Maid of the Abyss, if you go further down, then you'll get plagued by the illness. Well, to escape the top layer, obviously you have to do the trials, so I don't think it's completely unreasonable to assume that you have to do a harder trial to get out of the second layer. That's probably the most likely situation. And as for the curse, there's no confirmation that they are going to do a 1-for-1 replica of that system that's in Made in the Abyss. But if it is in the game, I'd assume it will be something like Tarnished, where it's going to be a flaw that's not game breaking, but it's definitely going to be noticeable and annoying. If you ever played Rogue, the experience of being one of the first people to explore the Sunken Passage, or being one of the first people to go to K and get their Ruba, that feeling is something that, like, I've not had the pleasure of exploring in Deepwoken, and I feel like with this content update we'll all be on the same stage, and we'll all have the chance to experience that for ourselves. If you guys are new to my channel, then you may not know that my old videos used to be all entirely like this. They all used to be on theories, so if you like to see stuff like this, I may post more from time to time. But apart from that, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one. Peace out.